Chosen one, the Father is weeping right now. Not because you have failed him, but because you are standing inches away from everything he has been preparing for you, and you cannot see it. You have been so close for so long that you have learned to call the doorway your home. And he has watched you sit in front of it day after day, almost reaching, almost knocking, almost remembering who you are. This is not a message of judgment. This is a message of grief. Because there is something he placed inside you before the foundation of the world, and it has been sleeping under layers of survival for decades. You are not too late. But the version of you that keeps almost arriving is no longer the one he needs to do what comes next. Heaven has not closed. Your name is still being spoken in the courts above. But what you do in this next hour will decide whether the door you have been waiting in front of finally opens, or whether you walk away from it for what could be the final time. Stay with me. There is a doorway you have been standing in front of for years. Tonight is not about pushing it open. Tonight is about understanding why your hand has been frozen. Because before any handle turns, something must be seen, and what you are about to see has been hiding inside the word that has shaped your entire life without you ever giving it a name. The word is almost, and it lives in your behavior in ways no one has ever pointed out to you. You have started projects that mattered to you and stopped them at 80%, not because you ran out of time, not because you ran out of resources, because something inside you flinched the moment the finish line came into view. You have rehearsed entire conversations in your head, fully formed, urgent, necessary, and the conversations never left your head. You have applied for things, sent the message, made the call, and then refused to open the response when it came. You have driven somewhere that meant something to you, sat in the car for 5 minutes that felt like an hour, and then turned the key and gone home. You did not call yourself a coward when this happened. You called it a busy day. You called it a sign. You called it not the right time. You called it being responsible. But the body knows what the mind protects itself from. And every one of those moments was the same moment, dressed in different clothing. Hundreds of variations of one buried decision, repeating itself across years of your life. What you have just felt deserves to be honored, and so does your time. So, let what is in this conversation for you be named clearly before the deeper layers open. By the end of this hour, you will understand the 2 specific reasons your almosts have repeated themselves your entire life, and neither of them is what you have been told. You will receive 2 practices you can begin tonight that interrupt the pattern at its root, not at the surface. You will be given a path that has been mapped by 2 researchers from different decades whose work, until very recently, was not made widely available to people like you. And you will be guided through a closing activation that has helped tens of thousands of chosen ones cross a threshold they had stood in front of for years. None of this is hype. All of it is here. So, if your spirit is asking you to stay, stay. Beyond what has shown up in your behavior lives a different layer, and most chosen ones never connect the pieces. You have been seeing numbers, the clock turning to 4:44, right before a thought you needed to write down, 11:11, appearing on a receipt the morning after a dream you cannot quite remember. Numbers that do not feel random, even when you have been told they are. This is not anxiety. This is your spirit recognizing what your mind has not allowed itself to name. You have been having dreams about doors, dreams about thresholds, dreams about standing at the edge of a room and being unable to step in. You wake up, and the dream lingers for hours, like a message that did not land, but did not leave. You have been receiving phone calls from the right person at the wrong time, or the right time but the wrong reason, and you have called every one of them coincidence. The body has also been speaking, and you have been calling its messages something else. The fatigue you have been calling laziness is not laziness. The way you wake at 3 in the morning, mind already running through tomorrow, is not insomnia. The heaviness you cannot trace to anything specific is not depression. These are the markers of a soul trying to integrate a calling that has not yet been given the tools to land. And underneath the behaviors and the markers lives the deepest face of the almost, the face nobody talks about. You have stopped asking for the big thing, not because you stopped wanting it, but because you got tired of asking. You have started preparing for disappointment in advance, calling that wisdom, when really it became a form of self-protection that turned into a cage you forgot you were living inside. You used to write the vision down. You used to keep a journal where you described the life you felt called to, the relationships you sensed coming, the work that would finally feel like yours. You stopped writing it because every time you wrote it, the gap between the page and your reality became unbearable. So you buried the journal. You stopped looking at the page. You called this growing up. It was not growing up. It was a soul learning to live under the weight of an inheritance it could not yet receive. And the worst part is that no one around you noticed. Because from the outside you look fine. From the outside, you look like you are doing well. From the outside, you look like a person who has made peace with their season. And I hear the Father saying these exact words, placed in this hour for you. I have watched you almost arrive. And I have watched you punish yourself for almost arriving. I have heard you call it laziness when it was a system you did not choose. I have heard you call it bad timing when it was a foundation that was hijacked before you ever had the chance to say no. Tonight, that ends. Tonight you stop carrying what was never yours to carry. And the way it ends is not by trying harder. It ends by seeing what you have been carrying that no one ever told you was there. So let me bring you the story of a man whose life has been told for thousands of years, and almost everyone who hears it gets it wrong. His name was Esau. He came back from a long day in the field, hungry, exhausted, depleted in a way that words could not name. His brother offered him a bowl of stew in exchange for the inheritance that was rightfully his. The birthright, the covenant, the promise that connected his name to generations not yet born. And Esau sold it for the stew, for one afternoon of relief from a hunger he had not been allowed to recognize for what it actually was. Most teachers tell that story as a warning about appetite. They have it backwards. Esau was not weak. Esau was starving in a way nobody had taught him to see. His body was crying out for something that food could never give, and the stew was simply the closest available answer to a question his soul had been screaming under his awareness for years. Look at your own life through that lens, even just for a moment. You are not the one who keeps making bad decisions. You are the one who keeps making decisions from a state your body and spirit were never supposed to be in for this long. Every time you almost stepped forward and pulled back, you were Esau in the field at the end of a long day, choosing the closest available relief, because no one had given you the language for what your soul was actually crying for. There is a frequency of survival that most chosen ones have been broadcasting under their awareness for so long that they have forgotten there was ever another channel. You wake up in this frequency. You make decisions in it. You pray in it. You make plans in it. And every prayer you have whispered, every visualization you have practiced, every declaration you have spoken out loud has been filtered through a system that was hijacked before you ever had the chance to choose. This is what the Father has been grieving, not your decisions, the state your decisions have been forced to come from for decades. There are two layers to what has been holding you in front of the door, and both have been suppressed in chosen ones for generations. The first layer is what some have called the drawbridge to the subconscious. It is the brainwave state, where everything you have ever wanted to manifest, every prayer that needed to land, every visualization that needed to take root, becomes possible. In children, it is wide open. They walk through their days with this drawbridge naturally lowered. The world shimmers, possibility feels close. Then, modern life arrives. The bills, the headlines, the schedules. The constant background hum of low-level financial fear that no generation before yours was prepared to live inside. And the brainwave that handles all of this, called beta in the science, becomes hyperactive. When beta runs hot for years without rest, it broadcasts a frequency, the frequency of scarcity, under your awareness, all the time. And no matter what you pray over the top of it, the broadcast underneath is louder than the prayer. The drawbridge closes. Manifestation does not work the way the books promised. The Father grieves because he hears every prayer, but the prayers are being drowned out by a system you did not choose to install. But even if the drawbridge opened tonight, you would discover something nobody warned you about. The room behind it has gone dim. There is a brainwave that scientists have only recently been able to fully measure called gamma. In children before the age of 7, it fires constantly. It is the frequency of intuition, of sudden knowing, of effortless creativity, of what people across cultures have always recognized as genius. Then, around age 7, modern systems begin suppressing it. The schooling, the screen, the slow training of children into compliance. The world rewards beta and punishes gamma, and the child slowly learns to dim the room without knowing the room exists. By the time you are an adult, your gamma fires at a fraction of what it did when you were 6. Researchers have given this a name. They call it the decline effect. And it explains why, in your most exhausted moments, you have flashes of who you used to be. A clarity, a creative pulse, a moment where you knew the answer before someone finished asking the question. And then it is gone, because the room behind the drawbridge has been dimmed for decades and nobody handed you the keys. There is a Hebrew word the Father wants placed in front of you tonight because it changes everything you have been told about why he cries. The word is Naham, Naham. It appears in the very first books of Scripture. Most translations write it as grief, but that translation is incomplete. Naham is the trembling of love, when love watches its child suffering in a way the child cannot name. It is not disappointment, it is not anger, it is not punishment. Naham is the deepest movement of compassion when the parent sees what the child cannot yet see and would do anything to bridge the distance between them. So, when you heard the title of this conversation, that the Father is crying, what was being placed on my heart was not divine disappointment. It was Naham. The Father is in Naham over you tonight. Over the gap between what he sees in you and what these two suppressed waves have allowed you to live. You were not born ordinary. You were born with both of these waves fully active, the drawbridge and the room behind it, the calm and the genius, the frequency that lets prayer land, and the frequency that lets vision flash through your mind without effort. Both have been dim for so long that you started to believe ordinary was your nature. It was not. Both of them are still in you. Both of them are still yours. What you are about to hear, you should hear directly, without veils, without the slow building of mystery for the sake of selling at the end. Truth honors truth. So, let what is real be named now. What we just touched, the dual suppression you have been carrying, has two answers, not one. Both were mapped by people who seem to have been prepared for this exact season of chosen ones. The restoration is 2 stages. The first stage opens the drawbridge that scarcity closed. The second stage illuminates the room that the decline effect dimmed. They cannot happen in any other order. Foundation first, then acceleration. The first stage tool carries a name. It is called the wealth signal. It was developed by a former Stanford neuroscientist named Dr. Stephen Newton. The second stage tool carries a different name. It is called the Genius Song. It was developed by Dr. Robert Lake after 34 years given to one question. They were not built together. Not even in the same decade. But the way they meet in your nervous system is the foundation and the acceleration this hour has been pointing toward. If your spirit is already pulling toward what was just named, the path is placed in the description and the pinned comment below. Do not click yet. Stay for context if you want. But for those who already know, the doors are there. And in the same breath that named those 2 paths, the deeper truth begins to rise. The names alone are not the gift. The gift is in what comes next. What your spirit has been waiting decades to remember. The remembering begins by walking with another generation that stood exactly where you are tonight. Long before there was language for any of this, an entire people group came to the edge of an inheritance that had been promised to them for generations. Their fathers had carried the promise. Their mothers had whispered it to them as children. They had walked across deserts to reach this exact moment. And when they finally stood at the edge of the land that bore their name, they sent 12 scouts ahead to see it for themselves. 12 scouts went in. All 12 came back saying, "The land was real. The fruit was so heavy it took 2 men to carry 1 cluster of grapes. The rivers ran the way the old stories had said." Every word of the inheritance was confirmed. But 10 of those scouts also said something else. They said, "The people inside this land are larger than us. The walls are higher than we thought. We cannot do this." Only 2 of the 12, 2 men named Joshua and Caleb, said the words you would have wanted them to say. They said, "This land is for us, and the one who promised it will be the one who carries us in." The people did not listen to the 2, they listened to the 10. And not because the 10 were lying. The 10 had seen the same fruit. The 10 had seen the same rivers. They had simply looked at the gift and could not believe it was actually for them. That generation died in the wilderness, within sight of everything that had been promised. 40 years of walking in circles, just outside an inheritance that had their names on it. The Father did not stop loving them. He grieved them. And he led their children in instead. This is not a story about disobedience. This is a story about the exact same pattern your life has been running. You have seen the fruit. You have heard the promise. You have felt the pull at the edge of your inheritance more times than you can count. But the version of you that has been broadcasting under scarcity for decades has not been able to believe what it is seeing is for you. So, you have looked at the giants instead of the grapes, and every time you have turned around. The reason is not character, it is not weakness, it is not faithlessness. It is the system underneath you, broadcasting the wrong frequency for so long that even the gift looks like a threat. The science behind what is keeping you outside the door has now been mapped clearly. Modern environments push the survival brainwave, called beta, into a state of constant activation. The body was not designed to sustain beta this long. When it does, it begins to broadcast a signal under your awareness. Researchers call this the stress signal. It is the frequency of low-level scarcity, financial fear, social comparison, future dread, running, all the time. Beneath every prayer, beneath every visualization, beneath every plan you have made for the life you are called to. And as long as the stress signal runs, the drawbridge stays closed. Nothing that needs the subconscious to land can land. Not prayer, not vision, not manifestation, not breakthrough. Even if the stress signal turned off tonight, the second blockage would still be in the way. The decline effect. Your gamma frequency, the one connected to genius, intuition, sudden knowing, effortless creativity, has been suppressed since the year you turned 7. Modern systems benefit from a population that cannot access either wave. A stressed mind is a compliant mind. A foggy mind is a controlled mind. You were not born compliant. You were not born foggy. You were born with both waves wide open, and both have been dim for so long that you have forgotten what your factory setting actually was. Restoration is not optional anymore for you, and it is not random. It happens in a specific order that cannot be reversed. The drawbridge first, the room second, foundation, then acceleration. There is no other sequence that works, and that is why every single thing you have tried until tonight, by itself, has not held. Pause here for one moment, because what we have walked through deserves to be held in plain words before we go any further. The pattern of your almosts is not a moral failure. It is the predictable result of 2 suppressed frequencies operating below your awareness for most of your life. Stress signal hijacked the foundation. Decline effect dimmed the room. The Father is in Naham over the gap between what he sees in you and what these 2 suppressions have allowed you to live. And what the Father is doing tonight, through this exact conversation, is showing you that the gap was never your fault, and the gap can close in the order it was always meant to close. You did not arrive in this body as a blank slate. You came with both frequencies fully open. The calm of presence and the fire of genius were both wired into you the day you took your first breath. Some of you can almost remember it. The summer afternoons as a child where time stopped and everything felt obvious. The way you used to know what someone was about to say before they said it. The drawing you finished without thinking. The dream that woke you with a clarity nobody could explain. Then you went to school. Then the bills came. Then the headlines. Then the slow training. And both frequencies began to fade together because the world you were placed inside benefits when chosen ones run dim. So, if you have wondered why nothing has ever fully landed, why every solution touched the surface but never the foundation, why every almost stayed an almost, this is why. You have been working at the level of the surface, while 2 waves underneath you were never restored. The Father has not been waiting for you to try harder. He has been waiting for the season when the path back to both waves became available to ordinary people in the specific order they need to be activated. That season is the one you are sitting inside tonight. There is a man whose story belongs in this hour. He is in his early 50s. He had spent his entire adult life as the provider for everyone around him. The kind of man whose phone was always the first to ring when something went wrong in his family. He told the people who knew him that he was tired in a way sleep could not fix. The work was not the heavy part, the carrying was. The constant, invisible weight of being the one everyone counted on, while quietly counting nothing back for himself. He started using the foundation audio because somebody he trusted suggested it, and he did it the way the protocol asked. 5 minutes, mornings, headphones on, eyes closed. He repeated the script. 11 days in, the change he noticed first was not in his bank account. It was that the noise in his chest had quieted. The financial pressure he had been carrying as his identity for 2 decades had loosened by an inch. From that quieter place, he started making decisions he had been afraid to make. Within 6 weeks, doors he had been knocking on for years quietly opened. He told the person who first told him about it, the change was not the money, The change was that the brain doing the work was no longer the brain that had been broadcasting the scarcity. What he was using has a name, and it is time to give you the full shape of it. The wealth signal is a 5-minute digital audio track. You listen with headphones, eyes closed, sitting still, while the audio guides you through a script that is exactly 9 words long. The script itself is not new. It comes from a Hindu practice that is more than 3,000 years old, calibrated for one specific function. The audio underneath the script is what makes the difference. It is engineered to bypass a region of the brain called the thalamus, where most of your survival programming runs without your permission. The thalamus is where neural rigidity lives. It is the part of you that has resisted every healing technique you have tried, not because you were not trying, but because that part of the brain does not respond to effort. It only responds to a specific frequency. The first wave tool carries that frequency. When the audio runs while you speak the script, the thalamus stops blocking the signal. Beta begins to drop. Alpha begins to rise. The drawbridge that has been closed for years begins to lower, and the broadcast underneath your prayers stops being scarcity. This work was mapped by a former Stanford neuroscientist named Dr. Stephen Newton. He spent the early years of his career inside the institutional system, where the kind of research that points at root causes instead of symptoms rarely makes it past the funding committees. He stepped out of that world specifically to release this. The research foundation comes from Stanford, Boston University, and other research institutions where the underlying brainwave science has been studied for decades. He did not invent the science. He made it accessible to ordinary chosen ones who could never afford the $7,000 biofeedback devices that handle similar work in private clinics. What the first wave tool does, it does. The beta hyperactivity that has been hijacking your life for decades begins to step down. The drawbridge that has been closed since the day modern stress entered your body begins to lower. And for many chosen ones who reach this point, the calm that arrives is the most foreign feeling they have known in years. There is something nobody warns you about when the drawbridge opens. The room behind it has gone dim. You walk across the bridge into the castle of your own subconscious for the first time in decades, and you notice the rooms are dark. The clarity that should be there is half of what it once was. The intuition that should be flashing through your mind has not flashed in years. Even with the foundation restored, half of who you were born to be is still asleep behind that drawbridge. This is the second wave. The decline effect we walked through earlier was not just a concept. It is the systematic dimming of the gamma frequency that has been happening to you since you were 7 years old. Gamma is what the brain runs on during what people across cultures have always recognized as genius. The flashes of knowing. The moments where the answer arrives before the question is finished. The childhood state of the mind, running clear and bright. Restoring it is the second stage, and it cannot be done with the same tool that opens the drawbridge. The work of mapping how to actually reactivate gamma in adults belongs to a different researcher working in a different decade in different institutions. His name is Dr. Robert Lake, and he gave 34 years of his career to one question. His research draws from MIT, Princeton, Harvard, and other leading research institutions where the deepest gamma studies have been quietly running for years. What he developed is the second tool, calibrated for the second wave, designed to be used after the foundation is in place. The drawbridge opens, the room illuminates. You need both, in that exact order. There is no other sequence that completes the restoration. The Genius Song is a 7-minute digital audio track. You listen with headphones because the technology underneath it cannot work through speakers. It uses what science calls brain entrainment, where two slightly different frequencies are delivered, one into each ear, and the brain itself produces a third frequency to bridge them. That third frequency is calibrated to the exact wavelength where gamma activates. You do not have to meditate. You do not have to repeat anything. You do not have to do anything except sit upright, close your eyes, and let the audio do what the audio is engineered to do. This, Dr. Lake spent more than 3 decades documenting gamma activation in adults across institutional settings. His work was studied at MIT, Princeton, and other leading research universities, where teams confirmed what he had been measuring for years. The decline effect is reversible. Gamma can be reactivated in adulthood, but it requires a specific delivery method that cannot be replicated through meditation, supplements, or visualization alone. What this tool does, after the drawbridge is open, is illuminate the room. The clarity that has been dim for 30 or 40 years begins to brighten. The intuition you used to have as a child begins to fire again. The flow state, which most adults only touch by accident once or twice a year, becomes available daily. There is a woman whose story belongs in this hour. She is 43 years old, a teacher in Texas, and for most of her adult life, she had described her own brain to herself as running at 30% capacity. She helped other people grow for a decade while feeling stuck in her own life. After 3 weeks of using the audio track, the part she could not believe was the morning she sat down and made 3 decisions she had been deferring for over a year. Not in the same week, in the same morning. The brain doing the work was a brain she barely remembered owning. I can hear the question some of you are already asking. Why 2 products? Why not 1? The answer is the answer this whole conversation has been pointing at. Because the blockage is not 1 wave, it is 2. The foundation alone leaves the room dark. The acceleration alone tries to fire gamma, while the stress signal is still hijacking everything underneath, which means the activation cannot hold. They were not designed by the same person. They were not released in the same season. But the way they meet in your nervous system is the only complete restoration that has been mapped. 2 researchers, in 2 different decades, working on 2 halves of the same problem, without ever meeting, both arrived at the conclusion that this is 2 stages of 1 journey. Some of you have been hearing this and asking, will this work for me? After everything I have tried, after every time I have hoped, and the hope did not hold. The honest answer is that the chosen ones for whom this has worked are the ones who carry the exact dual deficiency we walked through earlier. If your prayers have felt like they were hitting a ceiling, that is, the drawbridge closed. If you have flashes of who you used to be, that fade as fast as they arrive, that is the room dim. The tools were calibrated for exactly this. What it costs, you should hear plainly. Most chosen ones who go looking for solutions to the dual deficiency end up paying real money for partial answers. A meditation app runs about $15 a month and never reaches gamma. A weekend retreat costs $400 to $800 and works only as long as you stay inside the retreat. A single biofeedback session in a private clinic runs $300 an hour, and the home devices that do similar work cost between $5,000 and $7,000. None of those reach both waves. Few of them reach either properly. The first wave tool is regularly priced at $49. For those watching this hour, the price has been adjusted to $39. The second wave tool is also regularly priced at $49, also adjusted to $39. Each could individually be priced significantly higher. Dr. Newton and Dr. Lake both chose accessibility over their own margins. There are 3 paths that open from here, and all 3 are honored. The first path is the foundation alone. Wealth Signal at $39. 5-minute audio plus the 9-word script plus 4 bonuses worth $338 when sold individually. This is for the chosen one who needs to deactivate the stress signal before anything else, who is starting at the place where calm has not been available in years. It is a complete entry. It is honored. The second path is the acceleration alone. The 7-minute audio at $39 plus 4 bonuses worth $80. This path is rare. It is for the chosen one whose stress signal is not the primary blockage, who has been running a deep meditation practice for years and has the alpha foundation already built, but whose gamma is still asleep. Most chosen ones we serve are not in this category, but for the few who are, the path is here. The third path is the complete stack, both audios, both bonus stacks combined, worth $418 when sold separately. The total price is $78. Not discounted, because both products are already at the lowest price either has ever been offered. Just both, in the order they need to be activated, with everything that comes with each. This is the path most chosen ones who arrive at this conversation choose. The reason is simple. Foundation and acceleration do not add together. They compound. The drawbridge open and the room illuminated together creates a state neither tool reaches alone. Most of the people who write back to share what shifted in their lives are people who chose this path. It is not pressure. It is just what the data shows. The drawbridge open while the room stays dark is half restoration. The protection on all 3 paths is the same. 90 days, full money back, no questions asked. If, for any reason, either tool does not deliver what was promised, the refund is processed and you keep every bonus. The $418 in bonus material does not need to be returned. Dr. Newton and Dr. Lake stand behind their work that completely. Most chosen ones never refund. But for the few who do, every dollar comes back, and what was given as gifts stays as gifts. Pause with me, just for the breath of one moment. This is not a question of $39 or $78. The numbers are not the decision. The decision is, which path is yours? Take a single slow breath through your nose. Let your awareness rest, just for a moment, on the place where your heart sits, not to perform, just to know where you are. All 3 paths are honored. The foundation alone, the acceleration alone, the complete stack. Your spirit knows which one. The mind will argue. The spirit already knows. The 3 doors are below you, in the description, in the pinned comment underneath this conversation. Step into the one that calls. There is one thing you should hear before we keep walking, because the protection of what has been built matters. Both of these tools have been copied. There are pages on the internet that use the names Wealth Signal and Genius Song without containing the calibrated audio underneath. The fake versions are normal sound files dressed in the same names. They will not bypass the thalamus. They will not deliver the binaural brain entrainment that gamma requires. The only way to receive the original of either tool, with all 8 bonuses, with the 90-day full refund protection, is through the link placed below. Do not search Amazon. Do not search YouTube. Do not search Spotify or any streaming platform. The original is only where the original has always been, in the description and in the pinned comment of this exact conversation. What you do with the 3 doors is between you and the one who placed your name on the door from the beginning. The link is below. 3 paths visible. Step into the one your spirit names. Do not click until you feel led. Most chosen ones who write back to share what changed are the ones who waited until the pull was clear and then walked through. There is one more story that belongs in this hour, and it is not about either tool. It is about the pattern of the almost itself. A woman almost cancelled a trip last spring. The night before her flight, every reason to stay surfaced. She had not slept well, the cost was high, the week was bad. She came within 10 minutes of calling and pulling the booking. She made the trip anyway. On the second day of that trip, she sat next to a stranger at a coffee shop, struck up a conversation she did not plan, and that stranger became her business partner 6 months later. The almost would have ended the timeline before it began. The father had been arranging the meeting for years. She was the one who almost walked away from her own destiny because the stress signal made the cost feel bigger than the calling. This is what the pattern of the almost has been doing in your life. Not just blocking the obvious moments. Blocking the meetings, the calls, the openings, the decisions you cannot even see from where you are standing. Restoring the foundation and lighting the room is what allows you to stop walking out on your own life. Knowing the path is not the same as walking it. There are practices that help your nervous system settle into the restoration as it happens. 2 of them belong in your hands before this conversation closes. They cost nothing, and they begin tonight. The first practice has a name. It is called the almost audit, and it works in the opposite direction of every productivity tool you have ever tried. Most tools ask you to track what you have completed. The almost audit asks you to track what you almost did and did not. Because the pattern of your life is hiding in those moments, and until you see the pattern in plain language, the pattern keeps running. You do not need a notebook to begin this. You can start it from where you are right now, even if you are lying down or driving. Bring your awareness to the last 6 months of your life. Let one moment surface where you almost did something significant, almost made a call, almost sent a message, almost left a situation, almost asked the question that mattered, almost said yes, almost said no. The first one that surfaces is the one to start with, not the one you think should be first, the one your spirit chose. Hold that moment in your awareness for the breath of a few seconds. When you have a quiet moment later tonight, before sleep, write down 6 more, with the date, as best you remember. And 1 sentence about what stopped you, not what was happening around you. What was happening inside you in the second your hand pulled back. The pattern always shows up by the 7th entry. The version of fear, or the version of doubt, or the version of self-protection that has been making the same decision in your life for years, finally has a name on the page. If you want, drop one of those moments into the comments below. 1 sentence, just the moment, anonymous if that helps. There is something that happens when you take an almost out of the private place it has lived in your mind, and you let it stand in language somewhere outside you. It loses its grip. The almost stops being your secret, and the door it has been guarding starts to look smaller. The second practice is a movement of the inside, and you can do it whether you are sitting up, lying down, or driving with your hands on the wheel. Every chosen one carrying the pattern of the almost has, without realizing it, developed a posture of bracing for rejection. The body has learned to slightly close before any prayer, any declaration, any vision. The chest tightens, the breath shortens. Inwardly, the soul leans away from the gift before it asks. This is what restoration cannot land through. What I want you to practice is a single internal movement. You do not need to lift your hands. You do not need to change your body if you are driving. The movement is inside. Picture, in your inner sense, your palms turning upward. Picture your chest, on the inside, becoming wide. Picture the shoulders, beneath the surface, dropping by an inch. Take 1 slow breath in through your nose. And as you exhale, let the inside of you make the gesture of receiving, not earning, not deserving, receiving. Do this once before any prayer you whisper, any declaration you speak, any vision you let yourself imagine. Once before the morning audio, once before the evening audio. Once when you find yourself standing in front of any threshold, real or invisible. The Father has been waiting for the moment when the inside of you opened wide enough to actually hold what He has been trying to give. This is that practice. What you should expect plainly is that the first session of either tool may feel quieter than you wanted. Some chosen ones feel something the first day, many do not. The first sessions are not designed to deliver fireworks. They are designed to set the activation pattern. Calmness, presence, and clarity arrive in layers, not in lightning. Some of you will feel worse before better. The stress signal has been hijacking your nervous system for so long that when beta starts to step down, what surfaces underneath is grief. Real grief. The grief of years lived inside the wrong frequency. This is not regression, this is integration. Stay with the protocol. The grief moves through. If you forget a day, you do not start over from a place of shame. You start from where you are. The next session of either audio resets the rhythm. Consistency is what restoration runs on, not perfection. Most chosen ones who write back to share what changed forgot a day, or 3, or 7, somewhere in the middle. The Father has not been waiting for a perfect protocol. He has been waiting for a willing return. Before this hour closes, there is one more piece I want to walk you through, because the words you have heard tonight need a place to land in your inner sense before you stand up from this conversation. In your mind, exactly where you are, walk to the door I described at the very beginning, the doorway you have been standing in front of for years. It is still there. The floor in front of it is still the floor you decorated. The familiar weight of standing in front of it is still familiar. But tonight, see your hand on the handle, not pushing yet, just resting there. Feel the metal warm beneath your palm. This is not a regular visualization. This is a commissioning. The hand on the handle is the version of you that has remembered. The other version, the one who almost, the one who deferred, the one who called the threshold home, was never punished. It was loved while it learned, and now it has learned. Notice the stillness in the room around you. The Father has been standing on the other side of that door this entire conversation. He has not been waiting impatiently. He has been smiling. The grief is leaving with the pattern. What remains is what He always saw in you. What you have to release tonight is not your faith. Your faith is the only reason you are still here. What you have to release tonight is the version of you who confused waiting with faithfulness. The one who stopped writing the vision down. The one who started preparing for disappointment as a coping mechanism. The one who called the threshold a home. Let her go. Let him go. They were never punished. They were loved while they learned. Now they have learned. You are not the one who failed. You are the one whose foundation was hijacked, and whose foundation has now been seen. You carry dual heritage. Both stillness and genius were born in you, and both are being restored, in the order they were always meant to be restored. You are not late. You are arriving exactly when restoration is possible. You are the one God has been waiting for, not the one He has given up on. And I hear the Father saying these words, placed into this hour for you. I did not bring you this far to leave you in front of the door. The grief is leaving with the pattern. What remains is what I always saw in you. Step through. The room I prepared has had your name on it from the beginning. The door has not closed. What was closing was the version of you who could not yet see it. That version released tonight. The door looks the same on the outside, but you have new hands. Go in peace. The handle is yours, so is the room. If your spirit is still calling, the doors are exactly where I placed them. In the description below this conversation, in the pinned comment underneath, 3 paths visible: foundation, acceleration, the complete stack. Your spirit knows which one. Step into the door that calls you. Do not click until you feel led. You were never the one who almost. You were the one who took the long road home.